Hello and welcome to Mild's Comics Plate. I'm Mild, and this is going to be my brutal takedown of the Batman. So, a little disclaimer: the Batman is property of DC Comics. This isn't Batman content. This is a review of the film. So, if you want Batman, go find DC Comics, Warner Brothers, etc. Go watch the movie yourself. Now, what I would like to get started on. So first off, if I make some funny noises throughout this video, it's because I've been to the dentist today. Um, so let's head that off right off the pass. Secondly, the big reason I want to do this video is I've had some hot takes on Twitter and people have not appreciated it, but I feel that a video like this is the best place where I can kind of break things down a lot easier than the short tweets you can punch in on Twitter and then, you get 50 replies and then you try to explain yourself. Instead, I'll just go into detail here and maybe I can share the link and people will get the gist. So, my biggest complaint with the Batman is it's not a hero story. And I get a lot of people saying that, well, that's the point. The point is he's still learning how to be a hero. And the hard part about that for me is that when the story starts, he's been doing this for 2 years. Now, you could say that's a throwaway line, that's just part of the setting, that's, you can give me 15 different excuses as to why that's not very relevant or important to the story and that the story itself is pretty good. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. That's valid. That there is valid. But at some point when I go see a fantasy movie, a comic book movie, sci-fi, you want a little bit of the hero's journey in there. And I feel like for the Batman, there was enough of a detective story there that you could garner some hero tropes out of it, but overall, he did nothing heroic in the entire movie. So I'm gonna, that's my setup. That's my premise: is that he's not a hero. He failed at nearly every objective he had from the beginning of the movie to the end. Now I'm gonna couch that by saying there were a couple of scenes, and we'll get to those. But for the most part, this had no heroics in it whatsoever. And I'll give credit where credit is due when we get to those points, but hang in there with me. Just understand my premise is flat out I'm looking for the hero in this hero movie, and I didn't see it. So, the biggest problem I had with the movie, and this is kind of coming away from the premise for just a moment, but one of the most glaringly obvious problems from the movie for me is the whole plot line about Thomas Wayne. I know the movie tried to address it a couple times by saying that the mobsters were using the money from this renewal project to fund their drug trade, and they tried to tie the whole renewal project into Carmine Falcone and his whole situation, and tried to tie Thomas Wayne and this whole plot line about killing off a reporter who was reporting on the relationship between Thomas Wayne and Carmine Falcone. I understand that was all trying to tie past events of Gotham into current events of Gotham, and I don't think they did it. I don't think they succeeded. I don't know, after watching the movie and after examining that plot point, I don't know exactly how this charity fund had anything to do with the current events in the movie, with this whole plot to kill off Maroney and take over the drug trade and buy off politicians. I mean, I get that that money has to come from somewhere, and maybe it came from the charity, but the movie didn't do a good enough job explaining how that money was being laundered, or how that was somehow the fault of Thomas Wayne or Bruce Wayne. And maybe that's the point. Maybe they want us to think, well, it didn't really, and that was just Riddler being a psycho and reading more into a situation than what was really there. Fair enough, but those kind of things need to be made slightly more obvious to an audience. And it kind of felt like a convenient departure from the main plot. And it just didn't connect for me. I don't understand, other than to make it an interesting story about Bruce Wayne and make Bruce Wayne more personally involved in the villain that he's fighting. It all seemed like a red herring to me to throw Thomas and Bruce Wayne in to this MO that Riddler had to knock off all the politicians and rats and mobsters involved in this modern day plot. And, then I also have to then ask the same question in reverse. What does this modern day plot of a drug trade, a gangster takeover, and injustice in the justice system with these politicians have anything to do with Riddler's growing up as an orphan? I really don't see the connection. It seems like you're mixing two different plots together to create a villain that's more compelling than he really is. Overall, the character of the Riddler was an interesting one. I understand that they took a lot of inspiration from Zodiac and Seven and those kind of movies, and tried to make him a serial killer with various ciphers and riddles and questions. And okay, sure, and I was interested in that. I felt overall the plot was okay. I'm not taking down the movie because it had a bad plot. It was an interesting detective story, and the Riddler was an okay villain. I do have a problem that while he was sort of true to the source material, it was still a very big departure from the source material. I felt the Riddler's costume was insane. I didn't like the Edward Nashton instead of Edward Nigma. There's so many things that I felt was too big of a departure from the source material to make Riddler an interesting villain. Having said that, one other thing about the Riddler that I thought was glaringly absent, and again, this goes back to the whole Batman's not a hero trope here. The Riddler gave several clues throughout the entire movie that he was working online and working with computers and working in the social media space. There was a news report very early in the movie where Riddler had posted videos online, and at no time did the police or Batman think to check his social media or to check to see if he had a following, potentially of a bunch of terrorists that might want to blow things up. Anyway, the world's greatest detective, ladies and gentlemen, cannot think of the most glaringly obvious clue here. Which brings me to the next thing, Catwoman. I have received a lot of hell online over the last 3 days because I called Batman a simp. I alluded to the fact that I thought Batman was obsessing over Selina in the movie. to a degree where I didn't think she was necessarily returning the attention or the love or the respect or the romance. I didn't think she was as much of a participant in that. And, a lot of people really took me apart. And one way in which they took me apart was, when the two of them first met in the Iceberg Lounge, he notices her boots and then begins to follow her because her boots matched some boots he saw in a photograph of the missing girl. Yeah, but he looked her up and down before he noticed the photograph. Like, he's definitely crushing on this girl just a little bit before they even get started. So then he stalks her to her own home, finds the girl he's looking for, but decides to follow Selena instead, leaving the girl to get kidnapped and murdered eventually, because he's following Selena to ask her if she was part of the murder plot. The murder plot that involved cutting a guy's thumb off and leaving ciphers. Now, I don't know about y'all, but to me, that doesn't sound like a female murder. Selena doesn't seem to fit the profile of what I would be looking for in someone who's cutting thumbs off and leaving ciphers. Now, you could say maybe he thought she was a stepstone to get where he needed to be, but honestly, if it were me, I would have let Selena go and questioned the other girl who would eventually come to be murdered because she knew too much about the plot. To me, again, the world's greatest detective, ladies and gentlemen. So, here we are. We've started the movie off, and Batman's already failed 2 or 3 times in the opening parts of the plot. One redeemable quality of this movie was Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Now, I believe this is one of the most true to character. I mean, when I say true to source material, I want you to understand, I'm not just talking about the comic books. I'm talking about comics, I'm talking about cartoons, I'm talking about previous movies. The way these characters are written, there's a lot of different takes, there's a lot of different writing styles, but, there's always a core essence to these characters. And when you depart too far, you lose me. And there are definitely some previous Batman movies that have lost me on some certain characters. But in this one, I really felt Penguin was so true to every iteration of the character of Penguin that has ever existed before, that I've got to give Colin Farrell a standing applause. I got to give it to him. He was great. And I'm kind of looking forward to this TV series that they're writing around him. I just hope he can bring whatever he brought to the movie to the TV show, and that the TV show doesn't get drowned out by such bad writing and bad plots that this movie got buried under. So, moving on. The Penguin stuff was good. The Carmine Falcone plots. Now, again, the actor, I can't remember his name all of a sudden. The actor that played Carmine Falcone, great actor. And this is one of the best I've seen him. He did really good in that role too, and I got to give him props. However, the borrowed plot lines from Long Halloween and some of these other comic books where Falcone was in bed somehow with Bruce or Thomas Wayne, and Falcone being Catwoman's dad. Yes, these are interesting plot lines in some of the more obscure comic books, but come on, it just, this movie didn't need those 2 plots whatsoever. They could have went somewhere else with all that, and frankly, I'm upset that they killed off Falcone in the end. And I really felt that right there, that was a big turning point in the movie. Like, you had me really gripped with a good detective story until that moment, until the moment that Riddler revealed himself. And, granted, There were some things I didn't like about the plot up to that point, but you still had me hooked. You still had me thinking this was going to be a great movie. So then, then there's this whole big reveal that, oh, the plot's not over, and there's another plot the Riddler had going. And, I've already kind of mentioned how I thought Batman had failed at checking the social media, but, he also failed at understanding that there was a secondary clue in the carpet tool. It just, there's so many things that Batman just failed over and over and over again. Let me bring this back to Catwoman real quick. Another thing I was ridiculed online for was, someone had said something along the lines of, yeah, well, who kissed who first? Well, yeah, Catwoman kissed Batman first because she wanted to manipulate him into chasing down the crooked cop. Okay. That to me doesn't signify that Selina was any more in love with Bruce than he was with her. And to further prove that point, at the very end of the movie, they almost kiss, and then she says, "No, I'm leaving," and then they ride their motorcycles down out of town. And by the way, thank God the dang cemetery wasn't flooded. That's the only thing I'm thinking of. I'm watching this romantic scene of the two of them riding out of town together, and I'm thinking, well, thank God the cemetery's not flooded. Anyway, so, and then they get to that crossroads where they each go their separate ways, and the whole time Bruce is staring at her. She's not looking back at him. She's not looking for him. She's not thinking about him, and she didn't kiss him this time. The only time she kissed him is when she wanted his help to get what she wanted, which was revenge against Falcone and the crooked cop. So, again, he's not the hero. He doesn't get the girl. He didn't find out the depth of the plot for his father. He didn't get the girl. He didn't solve the Riddler's true MO and motivation. He missed the two biggest clues of the Riddler's endgame. The city gets blown up and flooded, and he can't do a single thing about that. But he does go after these terrorists at the end. And then there's this word that gets said, vengeance. And they play with that word through the whole movie. Catwoman calls him Mr. Vengeance. He calls himself Vengeance at the beginning of the movie, which don't get me started on the whole fact that he's writing a journal and he's giving these emo monologues about how fear is his tool and this and that, which don't get me wrong. Fear should be Batman's tool. That line should be somewhere in the plot. But, you're writing a journal, you're trying to sell me on how badass of a vigilante you are, and, how people think you're in the shadows and people think, no. And how you got this signal, which, hey, there's the other plot that I'm skipping here. The signal. You got this whole relationship with Jim Gordon that there's no backstory on, which, again, we start 2 years into the plot, right? We don't get to see that backstory. We can make assumptions, especially if you've read the Year One comic or seen the Year One cartoon. You could make some assumptions on how that relationship came to be. But overall, we don't know how much of an ally Batman and Jim Gordon are to each other. We see this distrust of other police officers, and, we just got to make these assumptions, which we shouldn't be having to make if we're 2 years into the story. We should be further out from that. That growth should have already happened. Which brings me right back to the hero plot. If you're telling me your vengeance, and it takes seeing a terrorist calling himself Vengeance to get you to realize the difference between a vigilante and a hero, And that's supposed to be your big growth moment. That's the big reveal moment in the movie, is like, oh, this terrorist called himself Vengeance, so now I don't want to be Vengeance anymore. I want to do heroic things. Meanwhile, you got half the city drowning, and what are you doing? You're saving politicians from terrorists. Okay. Maybe, and granted, there's innocent people there. You kind of got to do what you can and knock one thread out at a time, but, you know, when you have literally a city of, 50 million people, whatever, it's based on New York, so, do the math. But you're saving people at a political rally, which, he saved the little boy first, okay, but it's like, it's hilarious timing. It was almost comedic. It was like a big thumb in your eye. Like, oh, he's going to be a hero now. Watch him swing from this electric box, cut the electricity off of it so people aren't in danger anymore, and then go lift the little rafter thing out of the way so that he could start pulling people out from behind the staging where they're about to be crushed by a car or whatever the heck that car was doing. Again, they did not give me the feeling that this was a huge danger any more than anything else at that very moment was. But he saved the new mayor and saved the old mayor's little boy and a few other people. And we're supposed to believe this is the big hero moment. This is the moment where he finally learns how to face his destiny and fulfill his family's legacy, right? And this is what he chooses to do with it. And we're supposed to believe this is the hero arc. This is our savior arc, right? This is the hero's journey. This is him learning how to be who he's going to be. So he failed at being a detective several times through the movie. He failed at getting a girl. He failed at keeping the city from being blown up. And now you're telling me this is how he's going to be a hero, is pulling people out from behind a staging platform that collapsed when people are dying everywhere. When I see the levees break and streets flooding and, the monologue of the Riddler saying, there won't be time to evacuate. You see this big CGI graphic of a wave washing down a city street and just wiping fucking crowds out. It's no. No, this is like you're ignoring all that and then you're going to save the politicians from the 10 terrorists with sniper rifles. Okay. I Look, I'm not saying you ignore terrorism. I'm not going down that road. And like I said before, you take the threats one at a time, but like there's so many glaringly obvious things in this plot that just lost me, and that's one of them. You're not a hero. I'm hunting for the hero. I'm hunting for the detective, and you failed every step of the way. You failed to figure out what was really going on with your father, which don't get me started on the fact that once the Riddler put out that video calling out Thomas Wayne, like, okay, Alfred's in the hospital clinging on to life, and Bruce, instead of, being at the side of his father figure, which he was for a moment, but then this tape comes out and then this whole side plot of Thomas Wayne gets revealed. Then he goes on this whole journey about Thomas Wayne, and then he comes back and sits at the side of his father figure. It's like, no. Batman wouldn't do that. Batman would have never left Alfred's side. I mean, maybe if the whole city was under attack or something, but not because, oh, there's this plot point with this villain who is trying to call up feelings of daddy from 20 years ago. You got me, man. You can't get me with that. I can't go down that path. And, a lot of people are going to say because I'm a fan of Snyder's Justice League and Ben Affleck's Batman that I'm just being biased against Pattinson and Matt Reeves. I'm not. I really went into this movie wanting to give it a fair shake. And, I've had a lot of friends that went and saw the movie. They thought it was badass. And like I said, I thought a lot of the plot was kind of badass. You had me hooked. I wanted to see a resolution of the detective story, but the resolution fell flat. I mean, the whole bring the rat into the light was kind of neat, but like I said, I also wish they hadn't killed off Falcone, especially since 5 minutes earlier, Batman's trying to stop Catwoman from killing Falcone. It's like everything is just a wet dream and a tease and giving you blue balls, man. So, again, I give this movie 6 out of 10. It's worth a watch or two. I really meant to review this movie a couple weeks ago after I put out that other video. But then I heard that the Batman was going to be coming to streaming services, and I figured I'd give it one more watch. I'd wait for it to come to streaming and give it one more watch before I took it down, just to make sure that the things I thought, I still thought, because I had a lot of people saying, oh, no, you got to give it another watch. You got to really look for deeper meanings to these things. And okay, I did. I gave it a deeper meaning look. I looked for when Batman saw Catwoman's boots before I continued to say, okay, well, he was just simping over her. No, he was simping over her. He was looking her up and down before he noticed the boots in the photograph. You can clearly see that. You call me wrong all day on Twitter. I saw what I saw, and you saw what you saw, and I'm saying he was looking her up and down. He was falling in love, and she. Don't get me started on the fact that he, after the whole camera eyeball contact lens things, that he still had connection to those days later. Like a whole camera feed into her bedroom. Little interesting if you ask me. And, maybe she was looking for him at that time, and maybe she was trying to manipulate him at that time. But I see that he was fawning over her, and she had other plans. She had other agendas, and then in the end, he didn't want to say goodbye to her, but she was ready to get out of town. So, yeah, he was simping, and he wasn't being a hero, and he wasn't being much of a detective. He tried to be a badass vigilante, at the beginning with the whole journal and which I thought that was kind of neat. I wanted to see that growth, but the way it played out at the end with, no, I'm not vigilante anymore. I'm a savior. It fell flat. It fell flat, and that's my takedown of the plot. I mean, feel free to tell me I'm wrong in the comics or comments. Excuse me, not comments. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong in the comments. Feel free to share this video with your friends who may be able to take my takedown. Call me wrong on Twitter. But yeah, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I think my next video might be a review of Sonic the Hedgehog #2. So, that's going to be something to look forward to. You can hate on me for my take on it. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's awesome. I hope it is. But I also heard Batman was awesome, and here we are. But yeah, like, subscribe, share, click the bell for notifications, all the good shindig stuff. Leave a comment below. And definitely come back for future videos. I eventually want to turn this into a live stream thing, and I eventually want to be able to interact with people and not just have this be me ranting at my computer about what I didn't like about somebody's take on Batman. But that's what this is, and I did not like this take on Batman, but it was good enough of a action movie that I do recommend it, but it's 6 out of 10. So see y'all next time. Take care and take care of each other. Peace.